the Building Committee, and we have Greg Lavasser here, and Harry Tarkanian. Are you here also in that capacity, or? Not really.
You can come whenever you want.
He's being drafted.
He said that at the table, though.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We meet again. At our last meeting on August the 7th, it was a very busy evening. Chris wasn't here. He was overcoming a deathly flu, but he had been in Boston along with Tom and Kathleen Tringali at what was the MSBA School Building Authorities meeting for the Facilities Subcommittee. I will. And they presented a great plan that was incredibly well received. I heard from both our project manager and the architect before they got back to the Cape that they had never seen such a great presentation. The staff at MSBA was very supportive and very impressed with everything that was said by NRSC, and to defend, and I use that word specifically, defend the program that we're asking them to support. I did get the building committee tonight, a little side story is that Mr. Conrad loves to park in a particular spot in the north end because it's cheap. Unfortunately, it's almost a mile from the
Isn't that
fun? And poor Chris had to fight this flu and walk, try to keep up with Tom's long gait to get to this meeting. Oh, and it was hot and he was wearing a suit.
Sorry, Chris.
That's right.
That's okay, it's the last time I'll mention. So we moved from that point to, we had further meetings, and the staff at MSBA had some questions, and we had response and answers, which is part of the process. It goes back and forth. No matter when you present things, it's a draft, and there's back and forth. So on the 28th of August, Mr. Conrad, myself, Mr. Elsasser went up for the board meeting from MSBA for them to officially move the NRSC project and allow us to go to schematic design, which is the next big step in the process. We went up basically to thank them for their support and thank them for being our partners in this project. And I can't stress, I'm not sure how to make it palatable to folks, that this is a big deal, that this agency that handles hundreds of millions of dollars in funding is helping this district with this project. We can't poo-poo it. The architect is just amazed that we've gotten this far this fast because it's a defined and well-established need for the district, and the state wants to help districts succeed. So now that we're in schematic design between the first part of September and the middle of December, we're going to refine this project. And refine it in the sense of, there aren't going to be any plans per se, there aren't going to be specifications, but what we're going to do is look at the spaces and how they're organized, and are there spaces that we can move around or spaces that we potentially may eliminate because feedback from the MSBA folks. We're also going to refine the systems in the buildings, air conditioning, lighting, all those things that basically cost money to build and have a huge impact on the operations of the school. So there's a facilities working group that will start meeting in the middle of October with the architect. He'll bring his engineers down, and we'll have a process of refining those things for a goal of having a refined program and a refined cost estimate for a December submission to the MSBA. I believe it's at December 12th. And that process will then allow the proposal, the refined proposal for NRSC's project, to go to the MSBA board for a preliminary vote in February of next year. This is all ramping up to, folks, the official kickoff of this project to the 4 towns and asking in the spring support for the construction of this project. So right now, I went over the last month the cost estimate with the folks that were here. That has not changed, that document has not changed, but I did send you out an email that through Wendy Spampanato, our great secretary, that we have reduced the hazardous materials component of the cost estimate by $1.1 million. That is because the testing that was done on campus showed there was a lot less potential asbestos sources than they had originally thought, which is good in our favor because the project now becomes less expensive. So we're still working on that, and they have worked with Giovanna and Jim Nowak and Unibank to put a proposal of funding criteria and funding scenarios together, which will be presented to you folks, the town administrators, and the 4 towns at some point to offset, for people to understand how this is going to be bonded and how this is going to be paid for. But keep in mind, as I said, we're going to refine the project. And as we refine, things start to drop out, which means the costs start to come down, which is our goal, to make the project more affordable, but also give the district, the school, the environmental position and the environment for teaching that was on display here tonight. Sitting there, it's amazing what happens at the school. I try to educate folks on that, having my 2 boys go through the campus and what they were involved with on campus. It continues the legacy of what Nauset has done through education. So I'll let Chris and Harry please chime in.
Questions?
Nothing to fix, all of them.
Questions, yes, yeah, please.
Is the copy of that final presentation you guys gave available on the
On the website?
website?
Yes.
It is.
I'll-
Thank you.
I'll just,
Other
you
questions?
go to the website, it looks like this.
Oh.
It's actually in the top of the website, there's a scroll of different documents, and this is what was presented on August 8th. There's several pages, and it's everything that was talked about and presented by the architect and his design team, as well as Chris and Kathleen's input.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Yes, Dick?
Greg, you mentioned the reduction of the hazardous materials. I think it was mostly asbestos.
Yes.
That there was a lot less of that
Oh,
than
yeah.
you might have suspected. Are there other areas where you think the costs can come down? Maybe you can't mention it now, but can you guys mention some ways that you think this might further help us?
Well, just for example, and this is my second high school. I am still on the Cape Cod Regional Technical High School Building Committee. We spent a long time looking at things like which parts of the school were going to be high-traffic areas and which parts had less traffic, so we could adjust the flooring choices based on the anticipated traffic. We looked at things like exposures and windows to decide which parts of the building needed heavy-duty climate control and which parts we could relax the climate control. So that process, which is highly regulated by the MSBA, and which we will be going through with the architect and the architect's consultants, is designed to identify places where we can be efficient in energy use, efficient in material specifications, efficient in space usage, efficient in construction techniques, for example. The walls at Cape Tech are prefabricated panels that are trucked in and just snapped together like Legos, but you still get a strong, durable wall, but you cut down a lot on labor. So there are a lot of things that we can and will do to look at every opportunity we can find to address possible cost savings and also possible efficiencies of operation and possible length of service for the building. We want something that will last and be efficient as well as be as inexpensive to build as we can make it.
I would just add to that conversation about cost, the reason for writing the educational plan is to maintain the integrity of the design as it aligns with our educational needs. So, we don't want to spend money that we don't need to spend. We also don't want to cut costs that are going to compromise the integrity of the plan that the teachers wrote. And we're also looking 50 years out, and what may, we need to have a long vision. We need to look at that educational plan and then make the best decisions we can based on all of that.
And
Yes, Dick?
Is this all going forward with the idea of adding, I understand that all of the infrastructure is going to be redone, the HVAC, electrical, that's going to be a huge gain for that school. Is the plan going forward still to create much more natural light inside the building and also natural air? That's,
Yes and yes.
those are huge needs.
Yep. Again, you keep in mind that the total to the towns right now is still at $97 million. But again, we have not reduced that cost estimate to reflect the hazardous materials. There's everything's but the kitchen sink, and probably including the kitchen sink, is in that $97 million. For instance, as I said before, we were asked to air condition the whole campus. Well, the air condition, 220,000 square feet, is $1 million. So that number's in there. We haven't decided if we're going to do that. So that refining the systems I talked about includes that overview as well. The proposal, if you remember right, is to look at moving the parking lot into the front yard, which would then be over the current septic system. Point blank asked the question, there are septic systems under parking lots all over the place. Do we have to dig it up and move it, or could we just build a parking lot on top of it? So those are the types of things that need to be investigated to, quote, quote, save some money. Third thing is that in the cost estimate is the full cost of the CMR at risk project. Construction management at risk is in that cost estimate. That's several $1 million. We haven't made that decision to go forward or not. So those are all things that potentially are going to affect the bottom line that we will eventually bring back to the four towns to look at funding. And lastly, it came up the other night, and I believe Harry was part of the conversation, is that when you looked at potentially taking a mortgage for, I'll pick a number, 30 years, you want to be careful as to what you buy with that 30-year money, because you're going to be paying for things for 30 years that in year 20 or 25, you may have to replace because it's worn out. And so there's a balancing act all over the place. So those are the types of things that we have to be careful of recommending and going forward to spend the money on. Harry?
Or with technology, you don't want to be paying a 30-year bond on something that you're going to replace in 3 to 5 years because it's obsolete.
Are there,
And again, so there's a lot of moving parts, as you can see, and we try to keep all the moving parts in play and not let anything fall by the wayside, but we're doing the best we can to move the project forward, and with your support and confidence, so we'll just keep going forward. And lastly, the public information is hit kind of full stride. Ann is our official scheduler, so we run everything through Ann and her master schedule about people and groups that are going to hear the presentation. So tomorrow night, we're in the town of Orleans with the Board of Selectmen. Next Wednesday is Wellfleet and their Board of Selectmen. Tuesday, excuse me, I keep getting those. Tuesday. Then the following, Tuesday. And then the following week, the first week of October, it's back to Brewster and the Finance Committee there. I worked with Ann today to get another group in Brewster on the 18th of October. So it's moving forward, and everybody's filling in and looking for folks to present the program and get the information out there, because there is a lot of misinformation. Finding that out the hard way. People throw numbers about that really I have no idea where they come from, quite frankly. So,
Tom?
Sorry, Jim Parker.
Jim, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to hear a lot more about what the strategy is, our approach in garnering public support. And what I'm concerned about here is, here's my understanding on the timeline, and I think, Greg, you lay out what the timeline is between the committee and the state. Well, we've got 4 towns involved here. Some people have heard about it, some people are shocked about it, and other people don't have any idea about what we're doing. And my understanding of the timeline is that from a public support basis, we intend to take this to the voters next spring. Is that correct?
that's correct.
and next spring starts with Wellfleet in February or March. So it's now mid-September. We have about 2 months. We shut down for the holidays. So, and I haven't heard publicly a discussion around how we're going to tell the Nauset story. What I have heard is the reaction to the number, and people don't understand the number, among other things. So we can do all the great work. It's been great work up to this point. The building committee and what that team has accomplished in the amount of time is just amazing. It's endorsed by MSBA, the educational folks and the members of that team and the educational plan. All the internal documents are, the patient's alive and well. But I'm not sure if we're alive and well in the public domain. And we haven't publicly talked about this, and quite frankly, I don't want to wait till October to hear more about this.
So if I may, Mr.
So that's my pitch.
Tom is up in line.
So, Jim, let me update you on a couple of things that happened. From a strategic plan, we realized that in the summer months, it's hard to see even your own local friends with the tourism market and second homeowners coming and things like that. But we are now moving forward with a number of fronts relative to the publicity and then discussion on this project going forward. So for instance, we are in the midst of finishing up, dropping off large posters of the model of the project with descriptions of that project in all 4 towns. And they include town hall, they include the senior citizen facilities, the libraries, and so forth. And Greg has been involved in this effort, Chris has been involved in this effort. I know, I was just in town hall in 2 towns, and I saw them up in the lobby to begin to make people aware of that project. I can tell you that Chris, Kathleen, and I, on the day of the big storm, we hunkered down in the central office, and we spent hours working on a presentation for the public. We see 2 different presentations. Presentations to finance boards and boards of selectmen and the everyday citizen. And Chris and Kathleen have moved that effort forward, and I can tell you that we're focused on 3 questions. Why? Why are we doing this? And then from there, what is it? And then how? All right, now we got to give credit to I'm sorry I forget his name on TED Talks, but I think it makes great sense. And Chris was just telling me, and Chris, you can speak to it, you're very, very capable, that we are taking the body of knowledge that we think would be helpful to any citizen in our community. We're attaching images. We have reinstalled, Chris has put back on the table tours, and I would encourage anyone watching the show and anybody involved in this process to urge your friends and your neighbors to be better informed by taking that tour. From there, we're also rushing as fast as we can to respond to all 4 towns who have interest in learning a deeper understanding of where we're at and what can they anticipate going forward. As Harry and Greg have mentioned, I met with Dan Hort today on next week's meeting and delivered documents that the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen would be particularly interested in. I met with John Kelly a day ago to get ready for the Orleans opportunity to have a conversation with their people. And we know that we're going back to answer some questions. Ann Teff over there probably has the toughest job because everywhere we go, I know Greg the other night at the open forum was asking the moderator, I believe that's what we would call him, that we would love to come back and get involved in doing a presentation for the citizens of Brewster on the merits of this project going forward. She has 75 organizations we were reaching out to and now lining up that we're primarily going to be going to this. But Chris and Kathleen and I are working diligent behind the scenes of who can present this information. I can tell you one thing, if you don't know the high school, we're not so sure you're the person that we're going to put you out in front of the public. And right away, that begins to narrow the pool very, very small. And so the story is about ready to go public. We've provided the documents. Giovanna has locked in a meeting with our town managers and finance people to go over the numbers and the bonding issues and so forth. So it is percolating as we speak. And it is now time to go forward and to tell the story of this project and this facility and where we're at. So that's kind of just a quick overview, Jim. But I know I'm speaking to the whole board because I think all the board members want to know where we stand right today.
And
So-
the slideshow, 45 slides, 21 to 22 minutes, depending on how you give it. And what it does is it starts by explaining the educational philosophy and the link between learning, the community, the culture, the school, and then the aesthetics. And then it goes into images of the current condition of the school and explaining how those conditions, whether it's limited light or what have you, is impacting the learning. Then we go through and we outline the process, the steps that have happened over the last 2 years so people can understand the work that's been done. Then we show images of modern schools that are designed with our current understanding of learning. And then we go into a number of slides that show the actual preferred design that's been approved by the MSBA, and that ends with a slide that says questions. And we're ready to share that with people as soon as we can.
I just,
Yes,
like,
Jim?
My intent in bringing this up tonight was not to question whether the work was being done or not, because personally I happen to know it is. My intent was, I thought, a need to express it publicly, because a lot of good work, without people knowing about it, and just trying to call attention to it. I would ask the superintendent and chair, I'd like to see in the next couple of agenda items a lot more emphasis on this project in terms of all facets beyond just the work that Greg and his team is doing. I think it's absolutely essential for a successful spring campaign that we spend as much time as need be talking within this committee as to all the work that's going on behind the scenes, because that serves as a point of information, not only for us, that we can answer some questions to, but it also helps because the public is paying attention to what we're doing now because they're now aware of this project. So I think it's time well spent.
Yes, Greg?
just want to interject and dovetail what Tom had. We understood early on in the summer that to get people's attention in a public forum was going to be Herculean. We used the summer to build a basis. The information group worked diligently, as Chris knows, to get the website and that product where people are just astounded what's on that website. So we used that to build for the fall when we knew that people would get their attention. Last thing, or second thing, is that we're trying, my focus has been with discussion with folks, is that you want the message consistent. You want the messengers to be consistent. So for everybody to run off willy-nilly, to explain things to folks doesn't really help if the information is incomplete or unfocused. So a project this size, you really want to have a concise, well-managed, and well-exercised message. And I'll just share with you that last week, just catching Tuesday's newspaper, there's something caught my eye about a group in Brewster that was meeting that evening at 6 p.m. to discuss the high school project. I emailed Ann, I said, did anybody from this group contact the central office about a contact person? Nope. So I left the shop and I showed up at 6 o'clock and said, okay, what do you folks want to discuss? They want to discuss the project. I said, we need to make an appointment so that the group can be here and schedule this with you folks so you hear the consistent message. Because I'm not going to get into a one-on-one with questions that, as I said to you last month, and Judith takes me to task, there are questions that are not in my pay grade. And I will not answer them because it is not my role. So when we have the full team assembled and they go about talking to folks, everybody will get the same message and get the same information so that we are consistent across 4 towns. Because believe it or not, it's not just 4 separate towns. Everybody bumps into each other, as we all know. People from all over the place come around and say, did you hear this, did you hear that? So we want to make sure the message is complete and consistent. Thank you.
It needs to be noted and should be noted on a regular basis that there is a phenomenal website on the building project, and it is available off of the NRSC website. So you go to the school website, there's a link right there, you can link over to it. You could spend a year reading through all the various information that's on there. The history and everything we've gone through is on there, as well as where we stand, what the current proposed building would look like once remodeled. I mean, it's extensive, so you should go to the Nauset School website and click on the building link, and you can have all the information you'd like about it. Dick, you had something?
Yeah, Greg, you and Christopher both referred to a presentation that you're putting together with a large number of slides. Would you, I don't, it's not appropriate for me to ask him, but I guess through the chair, I would be very interested in seeing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe we could give you guys, if that's agreeable to you guys, we could give you guys some feedback and maybe just, I'm sure you thought of most of the questions you could get, but alert you to some questions that people might have. I think that a lot of the questions have to do with the dollar amount. And that's sort of the starting point. You know, do we need to do this because it costs this much? There's a very big concern in the towns, I know in Brewster, about the cost. But I would love to see this presentation.
Excellent.
I think it's an excellent idea, Richard. I mean, obviously, we want to get feedback on this as well. Do we have the best product when we go out into the public? So I don't see any reason why we can't present that to the board.
Can I ask if they do that for us, would the format be portable to the viewing audience? In other words, if they're slowing sides, I don't know how the technology would work, but would the people watching at home be able to see their slides in good definition? Would that?
So you're talking about using some type of live streaming for?
I guess so. So somehow it would be configured so that the image would come directly from the TV and maybe not a picture of what's on the screen, you know, and get the audio as it's happening here with really quality images, high-quality images.
We'll look into it.
All right. Well, see, Tom, my thought is that would be great for the public education part.
Yeah, so, Chris, I don't
Please.
mean to keep this going any longer than you want it to go, but we see, we're going to stop having workshops at the middle school like we have in the past on vaping and depression, and we had some great programs, and we've been averaging 55 to 60 people for any of those events, and that's including administrators, staff, and parents. So we're working with the studio right now to actually try to go live into living rooms of all of our homes relative to that sort of discussion in the future, realizing how busy our parents are. I mean, our parents are working full-time jobs, struggling to make enough money to take care of child care in some cases, and get dinner, and help with the homework, and make sure kids get showered and ready to go to school in the morning, get their clothes out, and then I'm going to drive to the middle school. I don't think so. It's just not the way it works any longer, and if we can say to people, you can have dinner, get everything organized, get ready for the next day, and at 7:30, 7 o'clock, we're coming into your live into your living room, and maybe have some popcorn and sit down and listen to this presentation, we think we got a fighting chance. So we're shifting the same focus on this project of how do we expand our opportunities to get the word out.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none? Gentlemen? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.